Good morning, Joe, the Joe Madden Sports Podcast here. Joined this morning by Dexter, sports anchor for New York Post and SNY TV. Dexter, good morning. Welcome back to the show.
Yeah, glad to be back. I think this is time number 3. Good to see you, Joe. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Excited to talk some NBA with you today, some WNBA and some NHL. We know we have to talk your New York Rangers.
Yep.
Let's get started
Yeah.
with the NBA. What are your thoughts on this right now? We have the game kicking off tomorrow. Where are you going?
Yeah, this has been a very interesting series, Joe, right? You had
Yeah.
game 1 where all the talk was about what Boston did in the fourth quarter and how they dominated the Celtics there. And obviously they shot the lights out, 9 of 12 from downtown in that game. And then in the second game, you see how the Warriors respond. And it pretty much was similar to the first game. If you look at the first half, I mean, the Warriors are it's a 2-point game at halftime. And then the Warriors do what they always do, which is explode in the third quarter. And Boston kind of does what they always do, which is they don't play well in the third quarter. So it's interesting there. But then the Warriors shut the door in the fourth quarter. And I think what was very impressive to me with the Warriors in game 2 was their defense and some of the adjustments they made. They were a little quicker to the ball. They were switching a lot on everything. They really had the Celtics rattled and feeling uncomfortable. Also, another game where you didn't see Jason Tatum look strong for the Celtics. So it's really interesting in this series because I think if you thought this was going to be a long and close series, which I did, I said this last week when I was on the show, I thought it was going to be a long, close series.
Yep.
After 2 games, you got to feel pretty good about what you've seen in terms of that. I just think the thing in terms of from a betting perspective, it's really tough. The line for game 3 coming up is the same as it really was for 1 and 2. It's just
Yep.
3.5-point line, right? Maybe that moves a little bit, but I don't see it. That's telling you, Vegas and all these odd makers are thinking that this is going to be a very close game. And I think they look at this as going either way. I just don't even know who has the edge or the advantage. Maybe you would say Golden State, but Boston is going back to Boston, and they probably feel like they did their job. They
Yep.
split. They got 1 of 2. And now the Warriors are looking to do the same on the road. They're looking to at least take 1 of 2 in Boston. So we'll see what happens. But it's been a very entertaining, fascinating first 2 games, despite the blowout in game 2.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I was going to ask you. Looking at the Golden State Warriors going into Boston, do you think they can win one of these? We know they have struggled against the spread on the road this season. Could they get the win, but not the cover?
Yeah, I think so. And it's also they won in Boston earlier during the regular season. So I think they can. Like, this is a confident group, Joe. They're gonna go in, they have the championship medal. I think they know what needs to be done. They know how big game 2 was them first to get that one at home before they go here. But I definitely think they can go into Boston and win one. In fact, I would predict, I think we'll see another split here. I think by the time this is coming back to San Francisco for game 5, the series will be tied at 2. Maybe that's a little me projecting what I want to see happen
Yeah.
because I'd love to see it come down to a best 2 out of 3. I love those scenarios in any playoff series. So I think what happened. But no, Golden State absolutely can do it. And I think they can get confidence. But one thing I will, warn or tell your listeners, viewers to look out for, I don't think they're going to be able to win this series if Klay Thompson keeps shooting as badly as he has.
Absolutely.
That's the one thing I've been concerned about with them. He did not shoot the ball well in games 1 or 2. He was pretty terrible in game 2. Steve Kerr tried to leave him out there in garbage time to try to get him going. Klay's got to get it going. He's not going to be the Klay of old, but I talked about this in some other shows. If he could be an X factor, if he can give you around 20 points and shoot efficiently, then that bodes well for the Warriors. So even in terms of him with props right now, until he shows me that he can shoot the ball well, I'm staying away from Klay Thompson right now because he has not looked good through the first 2 games.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear you on that. Now, if the Warriors go into Boston tomorrow night and get the win, blowing out the Boston Celtics again, do you think we come back with the next game with the books making the Golden State Warriors the favorite in this? Because we know they're a 3.5-point dog coming into this first game in Boston.
That's a good question, Joe. And I would say yes, right? And it's one just how much of the favorites would the Warriors be on the road? And I think it depends on how they look in game 3, right? So if it's a blowout win, or we see this sort of similar trend that we've seen through the first 2 games where it's a very close first half, close at halftime, one team pulls away in either the third or fourth quarter and wins big, I think that could definitely switch the line. You can go into game 4 and see the Warriors at minimum 2-point favorites, maybe, and that would be interesting. also interesting because then I think with the Celtics in the game 4, if they're down 2-1 with their backs against the wall, then it's going to be a pretty nice money line situation for them. And people may see a lot of the value there. So I wonder how much money would get thrown on the Celtics in that situation. So it's a situation where I think people could see really good value. They might want to look at some parlays, especially if the Celtics lose game 3 into game 4, where you might get something with the Celtics money line and Jason Tatum over a couple of points. There'll be some good value and things like that. So yeah, I definitely think if the Warriors win game 3, especially if they win in strong fashion, by that I mean 8 or more points, I think you'll definitely see that line shift for game 4, and the Warriors absolutely could be the favorites on the road. I don't think it'll be a very big spread if that happens, but I do think you could see 2 points. You might even see them as 3.5. That might be a lot, 3.5 point favorites on the road, but I could see 1.5 to 2, 2.5. I could see that happening for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be so interesting to see what happens in this game 3. For game 3, what do you think of Jason Tatum to record a double-double? He's had a double-double in 3 of his last 5 games. Plus 220. Any thoughts on this? Do you think he could get it done here?
Yeah. So here's the thing with that, right?
Yep.
The first game he had, forgive me if I'm wrong, I believe it was 12 or 13 assists, right? So he did it with the assist. I think it's about how do you think he's going to get the double-double? Yeah. Now he's been really good in the last 2 series in terms of if his shot's not falling, he will pass the ball. He has been trusting his teammates, but then you're also asking him to have these other teammates hit shots. So why I like that, and I think it's pretty good value in Jason Tatum getting a double-double, Joe, is that if he's still not hitting his shot, and Tatum hasn't shot the ball well thus far in the series, and he is playing the way he is, which is passing the ball, helping his teammates, you expect the role players from Boston who shot the ball well in game 1, you would expect them to also shoot pretty well in game 3 coming home. That's generally the trend in the NBA. Guys, role players playing at home, particularly in the playoffs, will shoot the ball well. So you're hoping Peyton Pritchard hit some shots, Marcus Smart, Al Horford, who didn't have a good game in game 2, plays a little bit better at home. I think it's likely. The other thing why it's good odds for you, if you're thinking about that as well, too, is Tatum's also a very good rebounder for his size. And he's had some games in his playoffs where he's already hit double-digit rebounds, always right around there, 8, 9 rebounds. So you never know with that. So there's multiple ways in that he can get it for you, whether it's with the rebounds or the assists. Probably a little bit more likely with the assist for him because of how much he has the ball in his hands. But I like it. I think that's a really good bet. The 220, it's good value there, plus 220. Is it likely to happen when you look at the trend in the numbers? No. But the possibility of it happening, I think, is good enough based on the value that you're getting to throw a couple dollars down in there, and it shouldn't hurt you. I think it's pretty good value there at 220. I think I'm actually going to look into taking that for game 3.
Yeah, absolutely worth a sprinkle with that value. Let's stick on basketball. The New York Liberty team, WNBA, how are they doing right now? I know they have a game tonight versus Minnesota there.
Yeah, 3-8 on the season for the Liberty. I had somebody before the start of the season, I wish I remember the person's name, they hit me up on Twitter, and they asked me what I thought about the Liberty this year, and do I think they could maybe make a run to the Eastern Conference Finals? And I just said, no, I love their young talent. I think this year was huge in terms of Sabrina Ionescu, and how she develops and what can happen. And I think that what they have to do is win the games that they can win and get better and watch how the talent develops. Now, tonight's one of them. All right. They're 3-8 coming to the season. Minnesota also 3-8 right now on the season. They're on the outside looking into the playoffs. I think if the Liberty are hanging around the playoff hunt towards the end of this season, I think that bodes well for them because they'll play some meaningful games down the stretch. But they're a young team. And right now for this game, look, they're favorites in this contest at home in Brooklyn at the Barclays Center. This is a game they can win. I think it's one of the games they have to win in terms of the development and where they want to go this season with their young team. So I like the Liberty in this one. They've also played some upper echelon teams in some tough games. They've shown a lot of fight, but they just haven't been able to execute well down the stretch. So I like the Liberty here in this game. I think they know this is one they can win at home. Barclays Center should be a nice crowd. I think they get this done here tonight in Brooklyn.
Well, I sure hope they do. NHL. We saw that game last night. The Oilers are out of it. The Avs have advanced. We have a game tonight. New York Rangers, Tampa Bay Lightning. This is going to be a great one. What are you looking at for this, Dexter? Do you think your New York Rangers can get the win here on the road in Tampa Bay?
Oh, they can get the win. There's no doubt about that. Ranger fans are a little bit bummed out that I've talked to about what happened on Sunday,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, I think the thing that I'm looking for, Joe, is that how do they respond? And this is something I was talking about with Anthony McCarron on my show on SNY yesterday. Is that you worry about a team when they were up 2-0, they blow it. Everything changes after the Korchakov goal. Everything changed after that, right? And they lose this game, 41 seconds left. Tough loss. How does the team respond to that? They're a team that has looked at momentum as not something that goes necessarily game to game, but they look at it as line shift to line shift, right? Face off to face off. This is how the Rangers approach this. Gerard Gallant and the guys, they look at that in every way. So I think in a way we've seen them talk that talk and compartmentalize and move on to the next play. How they do that and come out here, because look, crowd in Tampa is going to be pumped up. They're going to be ready. They're going to be ready to go. It's just, can the Rangers come out with the same intensity you saw them start in Game 3, and can they finish there? I think how they come out is going to be really interesting, because I was really sitting back and looking about how they came out in Game 3. I knew the Lightning would come out as being two-time defending champs. I know they come out strong, and the Rangers actually really impressed me at the start of that. So I think they can do that here. This is a big test for them, Joe, because throughout the playoffs, we've looked at the Rangers and talked about them in terms of dealing with adversity. And now in this series, they're dealing with a little bit of prosperity, having been up 2-0. So it's a little bit of new territory for this young group, and it's going to be interesting to see how they can deal with it. Look, if they come out of Tampa tonight with a split and they're up 3-1 coming back to New York, that is going to be huge. I think they absolutely can win. I just think if things go wrong, or when they do go wrong, that it doesn't get in their head and they think about how things happened last game. Continue to do what you did early on. They capitalized on the power play twice, obviously early in Game 3. If they do that, I think they'll be fine. But it's just really, to me, about what their mental focus is and how they're able to move on from what was a tough loss here and trying to get a win in Game 4.
Yeah, absolutely. When we see this New York Rangers team, they do come out so strong in that first period. One thing to look at for betting tonight, I want to get your opinion on this. You can get them on the reverse puck line. So laying that minus 0.5 here, and it is beautiful plus money. Plus 180-ish I'm getting here on my books. Do you think they'll come out just as strong as we've seen them come out against the Tampa Bay Lightning? Because they seem to have found that edge in the start.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen it in every game, right? Like you mentioned, Joe, you've seen it in every game. So I love that. I love that bet. The plus 180. That's really good. I love that, and I think that's going to be a huge focus from Gallant to them, and he's been talking about this, putting this behind us.
Yeah.
Let's get out to a strong start. One of the things you noticed, Joe, if you watched Game 3, was that Tampa crowd was not into it, especially after the first goal and particularly after the second goal. So they were not into it at all whatsoever. I think one player to watch on the Rangers that I think is interesting is Chris Kreider. He talked a lot about at the end of the Game 3 that he put the blame on him, said he was puck watching. He took a lot of responsibility for it. And I think that was him showing some leadership. But I think he's also going to want to make another impact. So obviously he had a power play goal in Game 3. I think he will. But the Rangers, I think, have known that getting off to better starts are important. They've figured some stuff out with Tampa Bay. And getting off to really strong starts and putting the pressure on Vasilevsky. So I think that, I love for them to do that. If they get an early goal again, I think it bodes really well for them, especially if they get a couple. Yeah. I think it bodes well for them in the first period, but I would expect them to come out strong once again.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think of Igor Shesterkin?
Oh, he's great, man. He's great, but I think what's impressive is not obviously his Vezina candidate and everything this year, but I think that not just how he played this year, it's seeing how he's bounced back from the adversity of these playoffs. He struggled during the Pittsburgh series. Things didn't look like it was going his way. And you've just seen him become more and more confident in postseason hockey. And as hockey fans know, you're going to go as far as your goaltender takes you. And anytime you've got a goalie like him who's all world, and we're watching two of the best goalies in the world in this series in particular, you have a chance. And he's just tremendous in terms of how he can stop shots, but also how he can handle the puck as well too. We don't see many goalies as skilled as he is in terms of doing that. So, I mean, he's tremendous. And look, he gave up some tough goals in Game 3, but the Rangers are confident. They know who they've got back there between the pipes. And I think anytime they go to war and they're on the ice, they feel like they have a good shot. And with him, whoever you are, you're always going to have a good shot. Shesterkin he's amazing, man. That dude is dope. He's amazing.
Absolutely. And I think what we're going to see is whoever comes out of this series definitely has the best goalie facing the Colorado Avalanche, because we look at the Colorado Avalanche, they have Darcy Kemper and they have Francouz. Do you have any thoughts on who you think the better goalie is of those two, and then who would match up better against the Colorado Avalanche? Because this is going to be interesting. I really do think whoever comes out of this series will raise the Stanley Cup.
Oh, really? You do? So it's funny because when I talk to other people, they're just like, man, Colorado, they're so high powered. We obviously see what they scored. They won a 6-5 game in OT last night to close out their series against the Oilers. I do think. Go ahead, Joe. Sorry,
I was just gonna say, I just think because of the goalies, I really do look at Kemper and Francouz, and they let in some easy ones. And Vasilevsky and Igor Shesterkin here, I don't know if they can compete against them.
And you asked me who I thought was the better of the two.
Yeah.
Probably Kemper. I might lean that way. But to your point, people love seeing, oh man, the Avalanche, they're high powered, and sure, they can score. There's no doubt they can find the back of the net. But to your point, they have not faced goalies as good as the two that are in this series. They're the world-class goalies, two best in the world. I think we would agree. Most NHL fans, I think, would agree with that. So I think it's interesting because of the matchup of styles. To say styles make fights in terms of boxing. How does this work when they see these kind of goalies, all worlds, who can stop a variety of shots and have done it through the playoffs, right? You look at how Vasilevsky was in the last round against the Panthers, where he only allowed 3 goals in 4 games, right? And you look at even Shesterkin, even if you look to the last game, for most of the game, it was a clean sheet, right? And then, he got some late stuff that he's given up. So these goalies have won in this series, as you're saying, Joe, they've been tested. Now someone could say, hey, they haven't been tested with the high-powered offense as good as the Avalanche, and I would be inclined to agree with that. But where I agree with you on this, Joe, is that we talked about it, the impact of goalies in the NHL and the difference that can make, and particularly teams that are a little bit more balanced, as I would say the Rangers and Lightning are, and defensive-minded. I do think that wins through, but I think it makes for a very interesting series, whichever team comes out into the Stanley Cup Finals, because it's almost like the NBA Finals. You've got a little bit of a chess match going there that I think could be really interesting in terms of slightly contrasting styles. And I would be inclined to agree with you. I also think, in terms of the Rangers, if the Lightning come out, their experience, right? Yeah. They're not going to be awed by the moment. Obviously, because they've won it twice back-to-back, or the high-powered offense of Colorado. And I think the Rangers, the thing that's going on in their favor is they're confident in their goalie, and their confidence has just been increasing and increasing and increasing throughout these playoffs with each round. So I think they're dangerous too. And also, it's one of those situations where they don't know any better, and they're young. So they might just be like, we're out here to take it. And I think that kind of energy is like the youthful ignorance or the experience can sometimes work for you in playoff situations, and it might work for either team. I would be inclined to go with you, Joe, and probably bet on the Eastern Conference winner here. Because I just think also both those teams have probably been more tested through the playoffs than necessarily the Avalanche have.
Yeah, it's really hard not to think one of these teams will raise it. The only advantage that Colorado really does have is they do protect their goalies. They can tame teams from getting those shots on goal. We saw that in every single game, really, except for that last game last night. They were allowing Edmonton to get those shots, which ended up in a higher scoring game because of it. But if their defense comes out and protects whatever goalie they decide to roll with, it's going to be really interesting. It's going to be a great Stanley Cup Finals.
It is. I'm excited. I'll be excited for it because you also, the one other factor you would think about too, Joe, is that, and we talked about this with the NBA, I think before, is that, all right, well, if the Rangers and Tampa, they go to war for 6 or 7 games, Colorado's now sitting, they've been rested. I wonder how much of a factor that is, how much energy they come out with in game 1 of that Stanley Cup Final Series. So that's something to keep an eye on too. And I think the Rangers, right now in the driver's seat, they have to be thinking about that, which is why they want to try to go up 3-1 tonight and try to close this out at home so they can get some rest themselves before the Cup Final starts.
Absolutely. They need to get that rest for sure. Well, Dexter, I have kept you way longer than I expected. We could sit here and talk sports all day. I really appreciate your
We
time
could.
this morning. Can you let everyone know where to follow you and where to follow all the shows that you have going on?
Yes, you can follow me on all social media platforms at DHenryTV. Catch me on SNY and the New York Post every weekend. I also did some days during the week this week. I also will be back there tomorrow, so you can check me out there. New York Post Sports YouTube channel and SNY's YouTube channel on there as well. And then I will be doing today Ain't Hard to Sell podcast, which is a sports and hip hop podcast that I do. I'll be doing a live one of that at 1 o'clock with my friend Brian Fonseca. You can also catch me on the NBA Exchange every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 11 a.m. And Joe, I just want to say I've been watching so many of your shows lately, and I've been talking to you about it. So, I've told you this myself. You're doing a fantastic job. You're getting fantastic guests, and I love a lot of the people you're bringing on. And just keep it up, because I love what you're doing. Your show is great. Please keep grinding. I love it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Appreciate your time. Can't wait to have you back on, Dexter.
We'll do it soon.
Okay. Have a great day, you guys. I'll be back in the next 4 minutes with another Joe Madden Sports podcast. Thank you.